So just in case I'm going to cut this video into two, I had a very long digression, a story about my usage, my daily driving, let's say, of Linux. So if I decided to include it in another video, now it's the time. Roll the clip. I was using Linux for a very long time actually, but to some point only in work, at work, on my work computer. So on my private computer I was using Windows, but the reason why I actually switched to Windows is the most stupid thing ever, as I think about it right now. So I was using Linux for I don't really know how long. I don't remember. I guess it was right after high school, or maybe even in high school already, but at some point I've installed Ubuntu, whatever, on my laptop, and I was just using it. I mean, oh boy, I wasn't just using it, I was also at some moment trying to switch to other distributions, because there are many. I mean, distribution is kind of a version of Linux system. I mean, I'm talking like this because I'm not sure if someone maybe someone who used to watch this channel will come here and be, what the fuck is he talking about? What is distribution? What is Linux? But anyway, I started to fool around, basically breaking the system every once in a while. At some point I was even using FreeBSD on a netbook, and I have some conflicting memories, because it was tiny netbook. So it were the times where every normal laptop had a CD-ROM, yeah, and it was a really tiny netbook. It was too small to have a CD-ROM, and I was using FreeBSD on it, and I have very vivid memories of installing NVIDIA drivers there. So it had NVIDIA GPU somehow, not integrated graphics. I don't know, maybe then it wasn't really a thing, maybe. I don't really remember now. But the funny thing is that somehow these drivers, I mean, they were working. So I had a normal desktop graphical environment, if you will, but when I was starting the system without graphics, so I was in the text mode, let's say, so command prompt, scary stuff, right? So if you're using FreeBSD, I guess you might quite sometimes need or want to just go to the text mode without trying to start the graphical environment, and I had some problem that I needed to solve from the text mode, and I don't know, probably there was something with graphics, right? But the problem is these drivers made it so when I was in the text mode, the screen was just black. There were no output on the screen. And I remember I needed to edit something in a config file. I guess I maybe have broken something in the config, then it wasn't working, and then I needed to fix it. And somehow I've booted the system into this single user mode or something. It's you normally in the system you have a user, you log in and then you have your desktop whatever, but the single user mode in Linux, in BSD, in this other weird non-Windows systems is that you don't really log in, you just are the administrator, right? So I went to that mode, and with no graphical output, nothing on the screen, I have edited the file, saved it, and it worked. So yeah, that were some funny times. But I was talking about something else. I was talking why I switched from Linux. So after all these years using only Linux, at some point I started playing World of Warcraft. And it was working well. I mean, it was working in Wine. It's kind of not really Windows emulator, but it's the thing that allows you to play Windows games, use some Windows applications, right? And it worked with Wine. So whatever, I was basically wasting my time in this game, and after some update it just stopped working and I couldn't play it. So I started, trying to do something about it, and I figured the only way to continue playing is to just install Windows. And I did just that in the end, and I just kept using it even though I stopped playing World of Warcraft at some point. I mean, actually, we might say that for some time I wasn't really using any computer other than my workstation in the office. Of course, now I have my workstation at home because I'm working remotely, but I only had this computer basically. I was using an iPad as a computer to do not really much, right? At that time, but then at some point I mean, it is weird because I had a computer all the time, the one I actually built originally for playing this freaking World of Warcraft, but I wasn't using it. And I guess at some point it became too old or too not powerful enough to play games, at least to play World of Warcraft or some other games like The Forest. So I couldn't play it. And then, yeah, I actually had an old MacBook. Later I just got some old MacBook, and so I had computer again. I was doing some stuff on the computer. I was even playing some games on Mac, but some old games or some Minecraft, but in the end I actually, Jesus Christ, I just realized I did it again because some of my friends started playing World of Warcraft again, and that was my motivation to actually get a desktop PC, with some let's say, gaming capabilities and installed Windows 7 on it, upgraded it to Windows 10, and I was using it right. I mean, I guess I stopped using Windows not long after my last video on the channel, but I was already kind of leaning towards Linux at some point, but I couldn't make it work on my laptop. I was trying to install Manjaro and it just wasn't working. I guess now that I think it might have been some problem with secure boot or something, but it just didn't work. So I end up keeping some virtual machine with Linux, but in the end I guess I just was using Windows because I thought that okay, I guess Linux won't work on this laptop. Boy, was I wrong. So at some point I watched a video by good old Mutahar about switching to Linux, and you know, I should have already known that, but I was quite biased against Ubuntu. But if there is any Linux distribution that is going to work, to just work, it's probably Ubuntu. And guess what? It just worked. So I started using Ubuntu. And I was using it for quite a long time, I guess. I mean, I'm sure I switched from Ubuntu after I moved from my previous flat, and yeah, and then the fun started. I mean, I started tinkering in the system, but it wasn't the main reason I started, you know, changing things around. But the main reason was that Ubuntu was just randomly freezing. I mean, I had that problem on some ancient version I had on my workstation, but it also happened on the newest version I had on my laptop. Even after updating my workstation, it still happened, and I was just over it, and I've decided, okay, I'm switching away. And my pick was the oldest still maintained Linux distribution, which I already had used back then for some while, and it was Slackware. So if you're a intermediate Linux user and you really want some tinkery system, but not like very tinkery like Gentoo, use Slackware. Arch Linux is basically, you know, maybe a little harder to install than Ubuntu, but other than that, it's just Ubuntu with other package manager basically. In terms of, you know, how is it complicated to use. You have the package manager, and it basically does everything for you. So you install a package, it finds dependencies. If there's a kernel update, it will generate everything you need, and you're done. In Slackware, you don't have package dependencies, so you need to manually install all the dependencies of a package you're installing. And if you happen to update the kernel, so normally if you don't make any changes in configuration, the kernel is the core of the system, you know. But I'm already talking so nerdy stuff that if you don't know what's going on, you're probably already clicked off this video. So the kernel is treated just like any other package. So the old kernel is deleted, removed, and the new kernel is installed. But it doesn't update anything. It doesn't do any automatic changes, like, you know, setting up the bootloader to point to this new kernel, or generate the initial image with, you know, some drivers, whatever. At least if you're using the generic kernel, whatever. I'm not going into details now, but this is really, you know, distro for tinkering, for doing some stuff, and I'm for sure going to make a video about it, because I've seen a video from DistroTube who was reviewing kind of Slackware, and was just so triggered because he missed some really important stuff about it, like that Slackware has no package manager, but it does. Actually, I think that Slackware has really a lot of packages. Anyway, that's not the subject of this video. So I switched to this weird distribution. I was spending so much fucking time tinkering, changing things around. Basically, I wouldn't say wasting time, because that's kind of a learning experience when you are doing it. But finally, I wanted to just, you know, have more minimal setup, to remove some packages, to just have the programs I need. But the problem with Slackware is, first of all, it doesn't track dependencies. So you don't know if uninstalling something isn't breaking something else. So if I wanted to clean some of these packages, I was again and again ending up with a broken system, and I had to reinstall something. And yeah, so at some point I got tired with it, and yeah, and I decided, okay, I will fall into the meme, and I started using Arch, by the way. So I was using Arch, not for really a long time actually, because I've right away switched to Artix Linux, but it's basically Arch Linux without systemd. So yeah, I was using it, and it was so damn easy to use compared to Slackware. I guess if there are some Arch Linux fanboys, you know, elite hack source, yeah, Arch Linux, yeah, elite. No, it's just a little more complicated to install than other distributions which just guide you through installation. But other than that, it's just as easy to use as any other distribution with, you know, desktop environment basically. So I was using it, but I've got tired also at one moment, because I had a weird problem that that at some point my system just broke, because of course after update, and there was really no indication what the fuck happened. But what I figured out, that after making another update, there was only one package updated, actually downgraded, and everything started working. But I had even no error message, no anything. The desktop environment just didn't start, and that's that. I mean, even the login manager, I was just in the TTY, so in the text, in the command line. So basically, I guess there was some maybe error that some newer package accidentally went to the repository. But anyway, it just soured things up for me. I thought, okay, I'm done with it. I don't want to tinker with the system. I want quite, stable experience, quite complete experience, whole desktop environment, no weird stuff, and especially not a system that breaks for no reason. So then I discovered Nitrux OS. So it's of course also a Linux distribution based on Debian, so kind of added stability. But actually I was quite biased against Debian, but not because of Debian itself, but because of Ubuntu. But now I think that actually Debian is one of the best, if not actually the best distribution to just use. Anyway, the Nitrux seemed quite fine. They had this weird thing that they were basically using repositories from few other distributions. They were using Debian repositories, but they wasn't using systemd, so they had some weird workarounds to be able to use it. And at some point I just realized that it's quite a mess, but I'm not going to talk much about it because I already spent way too much time talking about it, and I'm probably going to put it in a separate video. But finally I've settled on Devuan. It's basically Debian but without systemd, and it's nice. I'm using the unstable version, which is quite stable. How unstable can it be? It's fucking Debian, and it's quite fine. It works well. I don't want to criticize Nitrux too much, because actually I've taken many ideas for configuring my system from Nitrux, but you may be damn sure I will make a video explaining how and what I did with my computer. Don't worry. So that was my Linux story, which was kind of not planned to be like this, but well, now you know. So thank you for watching, and see you in the next one. I don't know where the fuck I'm pointing. Camera is here, so bye. Bye.